Welcome to Behind the ABA Talk podcast, where we have heart-to-heart conversations with expert speakers from the LSGurdin Consulting Continuing Education program. I'm your host, Lisa Gurdin, founder of LSGurdin Consulting. A special thank you to our CE partners and sponsors, Massachusetts Partnership for Youth, Lab Collaborative, and Accept Collaborative. Our amazing guest today is Dr. Jennifer Ruane, who will be talking about performance management in practice, building and sustaining motivation for our March Continuing Education event. Dr. Ruane is the Director of Professional Development and Clinical Training at Melmark, Pennsylvania. She holds a doctoral degree in Applied Behavior Analysis from Endicott College and is a board-certified behavior analyst, as well as a licensed professional counselor. With experience across educational, residential, and home settings, she specializes in designing competency-based instruction, performance management, and systems analysis. Dr. Ruane designs and leads training programs and regularly presents on OBM topics, including behavior-based safety, staff performance, and professional growth. She's committed to building a skilled workforce to improve organizational outcomes. Welcome, Jen. I am so happy you are here with me.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
I am also just so interested to hear about your journey in ABA, given the work you've done in OBM and your counseling and the whole journey. Tell us.
It's been definitely a journey. I like that word, an adventure. I would also say, I originally started out, as you mentioned, I'm a licensed professional counselor, but it's actually not the whole part of me. It's a very, very small, if not almost nothing part, but it was part of how I ended up here. And I went to get my master's and, thought I wanted to do one-on-one counseling, cognitive behavioral therapy. And unfortunately, I learned in the second year of my master's, as I was getting towards the end of my internship, that it really was just not for me. It didn't fit, really where my long-term professional, where I saw myself. So once I graduated, I kind of had to go, well, now what? um, how do I navigate? And I was able to, I started at a residential treatment facility for children with autism. And that was, that is where my whole career started. I did some one-on-one work in schools while I was going through, but I really opened my eyes to the field. And I started there, and someone had said, hey, well, why don't you go get your BCBA? And I was like, well, I have no idea what you're talking about, but sure, let's just keep tacking on degrees. Fortunately, back then, in 2014, the BACB did not have as many requirements for your master's to be able to. So I very easily was able to go take that shortened course sequence and then start gaining hours. And that's really took off from there. And, I moved around to a couple different settings, as you mentioned in my bio. And it wasn't until I started at Melmark about 9 years ago at this point that I was introduced to OBM. I really had never heard of it, really didn't know much about it. I had supervised. I was a supervisor for many years before that, but I definitely don't supervise that way anymore after learning all the practices. But I'll never forget Dr. Sean Quigley, he was my supervisor when I started, and it is still to this day, gave me the books Paradox for Organizational Change. And it has just stuck with me. I still refer to that book almost every presentation. It almost every time I talk about OBM, I recommend that book. It was just kind of my window into like this whole other world, and I just fell in love with it. And I just dove into it. And I was very fortunate that my job, I started as a clinical training coordinator before moving into the director, but my whole department and Melmark itself runs by, the principles of organizational behavior management. So I really was able to grow my skills, practice my skills, get feedback on my skills, really flourish in that area. And then, when I thought about going back to school to get my doctorate, and talking with Dr. Mary Jane Weiss and, you know, really supporting me and kind of carving out a track for me at Endicott and allowing me to be able to work alongside Dr. Nick Weatherly as my advisor. So it just kind of has progressed over those years. And anyone who takes a class with me or does a presentation just knows I'm such a nerd when it comes to OBM, performance management. I just love it. I could talk for hours on it.
It's so great when you find your passion, and your the space professionally where you want to
Yeah.
live in,
Yeah.
especially I think you can appreciate even more if you've had to pivot like you did,
Hmm.
and I think a lot of people can relate to that, starting on one path and saying, wait. I don't
Yeah.
really want to do that. I want to do this, and then
Hmm.
throwing yourself into that. So I think that's really cool. So when you think though about like sort of that counseling training, I'm always intrigued by people who have multiple areas of training and different lenses. How do you integrate the two? And I know it's been a long time since you've been in that world, but I would think that that would, be part of kind of how you approach things.
Yeah. Well, I don't necessarily use the practices that I would say or any of the principles that I learned throughout my time at the master's, just because I did take such a hard pivot. I think it's more my life experiences that I had to go through in order to, uh, what kind of shaped me into, taking that path and into who I am now and some of my passions, because I've seen along the way, and this is part of my experiences, how important first contact is with a field and with
Mhm.
hands-on experience. And it's something that I very much advocate now about what supervision should look like. We talk about how to translate, and bridge that gap between the academic world and the
Mhm.
hands-on applied world in which we're going to work in. And
Mhm.
that for me, it was, when I was going through my master's and doing my internship, it wasn't a great experience. And it did play a role in kind of going, oh, I don't know if I like this. I kind of wasn't getting a whole lot of feedback from a supervisor standpoint. I felt a little lost. And so now I'm sure there's supervisees that feel the same way. That might finish their schooling first and then go get their hours or even getting hours during that of kind of going, oh, what am I doing? How do I apply everything, and a lot we've moved from, in-person instruction to online and asynchronous instruction. So the academic world has shifted as well. And I think shifted, it has its pros and cons in terms of it's great because I love the fact that we can get access to really good quality academic and really high quality professors that are not in your state. And obviously, for many of us who have to work at the same time, but it also kind of sometimes takes away from our ability to bridge that connection between. So I think as a field, we're just growing and we're understanding and we're navigating it and we're doing better as we get on. Um, but it's so like it's definitely an important area just because I know how much it really did affect me and in a good way, right? I'm glad I went through that, because I definitely, as you mentioned, this is a passion of mine. I really much love what I do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see that I teach asynchronous I teach asynchronously in undergrad, and then I teach practicum courses that are remote but live and synchronous. And we talk about that, right? I can see that disconnect, and I can see, that there is so much we need to be doing in this space, where we're talking about behavior analysis, we're living it, and we're learning as we're talking, and we have someone to go to when there are
Yep.
challenges, and there are challenges that you can't find
Yep.
answers to in a textbook, or
Exactly.
you know what I mean? You need to
Hmm.
talk those through and experience
Yep.
it. So I really appreciate that, and it's nice to know too that that experiences, not just in ABA, right? Like that
Hmm.
in other fields too, there's places, ways we can grow and learn, and that
Yeah.
we all need to really focus on that supervisory relationship, that supervisory experience for new professionals, continuing that through mentoring. It's so,
Mhm. Yes.
so essential.
Yeah, it's takes so, there's so much that goes into building a supervisory relationship, but then there's
Yes.
equal amount of effort into maintaining it. And then,
Yes.
for those that shift, there's
Yeah.
supervisors that shift into that mentor role. I talk,
Yes.
like I said, Sean, very much my supervisor was my supervisor, but now I very much think of him as a mentor that
Yeah.
has guided me through, my entire
Absolutely.
career. So it's, as a supervisor, you have a lot more power, in creating good than I think we
Yes.
realize, when we step onto the floor every day and work with our students, our individuals, and then obviously our supervisees. So,
Oh my gosh, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that it's kind of scary for a lot of people, but I think for
mhm,
me, it's very empowering that
mhm,
we have this opportunity to really influence what happens
yes,
today and tomorrow, right? We can't go
mhm,
back, we can't change what we did before, but we
yep,
can certainly influence what happens moving forward. And establishing just more and more relationships with people is just, so, so important.
yeah.
So when you think about your early path, what would you tell yourself, your young behavior analyst or professional self?
Oh gosh, looking just from a supervisor perspective, there's so many things I'd be like, "What are you doing?"
There, there.
I think one of the things I've learned so much and where I get really excited is there's so much amazing research and evidence-based practices out there that I just didn't take the time to
Mm,
really learn. And I did have that lens of like a very much I don't say blaming, but like we're very quick to kind of blame the employee or run to corrective action if someone's engaging in a behavior that we don't necessarily want to see. And we have really, I've really grown in being able to utilize those tools, which is why I like talking about them so much. Because I wish I had kind of gone back and explored, how I supervise through that lens,
mm,
and being able to really look at, it's the same thing we do with our individuals, right? We collect ABC data, we look at the A's and the C's around the behavior, and I never really took the time to do that.
mm,
And I'm sure that probably in some way hindered my ability to maybe build rapport with, some of the supervisees I've had. So, and I think also too is just not don't be hard on yourself. Like we said, like everything's a learning experience. We're going to do things that
yes,
we're like, oh, that's a little cringe that I did, back in the early days. But it's okay to learn from that and grow
yes.
from that. And then I love it to pass on to the next person, be that role model for the next person, because you very much are, as much as sometimes we don't realize it.
Absolutely. And you talk about that grace, that self-grace and
Yeah.
and that self-compassion, and that has come up across multiple podcast conversations with people all over, the country, just really talk all over the world, really. And that keeps coming up of like, I wish I had more compassion for
I
my
know.
mistakes and that growth mindset. Like, why didn't anyone tell us?
Yeah.
When we were
Right?
younger about the growth mindset, right? Like mistakes are good.
Mhm.
It's okay. You can learn from them, like you said.
Exactly.
I wish we had known that. Like it would have been
Yeah.
really helpful, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh, helpful. So talk to me about motivation. That's going to be sort of the basis of your talk. And so tell me, about what what is your perspective kind of on motivation and how it affects people as they approach their work and what they do in the context of their work. Um, yeah, from a behavioral lens, tell me.
Yeah, motivation has to be built. right? And I think that's part of the thing that is a misunderstanding, and I'll talk about this during the presentation, is that we assume people are motivated. We assume people are
Yes.
motivated to come to work every day, to do the job as it's described, to follow the expectations. And then we struggle sometimes to understand, well, why don't they want to do this? Or, hey, they're so great, and I gave them like I got the on this extra project. Why aren't they happy that they're on this extra project? And so we're not understanding that motivation looks so different person to person. And we need to recognize that, yes, some people are really motivated by being able to jump into these extra projects and learn more. And they have no problem staying past their time to really like help, maybe design or make some extra materials for a classroom. But then there's a group of people that it's okay that they're motivated to end their day and to go home. And we need to recognize that, I think, as supervisors, is that we really do need to take the time to understand what motivates people. And it's not the external reinforcers, right? It's not the tangibles. And yes, that's going to get you a little momentum. But like when you look at it from like a discretionary effort standpoint, like when you look at those nice graphs that they put out, and I'll have this as well, but those external reinforcers are really great for building motivation, but it's not great at sustaining it long term.
Yeah.
You really need to build in that inherent, and that what is inherent motivation is different person to person. And so that's where, I really emphasize taking the time to assess and get to know and understand the variables that are in your environment that could be impacting motivation, because the ultimate goal is to make the workplace enjoyable for people to want to come to work. And that is, it's a heavy load as a supervisor.
Mhm.
It's a large, tasks that we have. And like I said, it takes a while to build it, and it takes even more effort to keep it going. And you're going to have to pivot, and you're going to have to change, and you're going to see some variability over time, but you have to be dedicated to building motivation, because it is not something that people are automatically going to walk in the door with.
It's so interesting that you mentioned sort of that initial motivation, like what brings people into the field or into the job initially, and then what sustains that motivation, like that sustainability. And that's so interesting. I can't wait to hear you talk more about that, because that shifts over time as our lives shift too,
Yeah,
and our priorities shift, and there's that
absolutely.
flow of life, right? And so your
Hmm.
motivation is going to I mean, definitely shifted for me from time to time, where I took a break to take care of my family for a
Yeah.
period of time, and that was my which was a stronger motivator at that time
Yep.
than work. And I
Exactly.
was able to come back to it, but at that time, my motivation, my MO completely shifted. And it was more
Absolutely.
reinforcing for me to get my kids together than it was to consult
Yeah.
and make a difference in our world. So,
Yeah. And that's why, like, that's why I think it's so important that we look at it through that lens, because it's
yeah,
easy to say that it's the employee's fault, right? That they're not
yes,
motivated. And it's just kind of very blame
yes,
focused. And that's really where I try to, in a lot of the tools that we talk about and that we will talk about during the presentation, if when you start to go through them, they aren't talking about what's wrong with the employee. It's starting with, what are we doing as from the environment standpoint? How are we setting up our
yes,
organization? What are the what stimuli are going on in the environment that might be prompting this behavior, the
yes,
undesired behavior, or the consequences that are maintaining it. We just haven't taken the time to analyze it. And then, but it's great when the light bulb goes off, and it's like, oh, now I can see why these behaviors are perpetuating. And then it's a quick fix, because now I know how to rearrange my environment or rearrange consequences.
yes. I mean, you hope it's a quick fix. I
You
would
hope.
imagine that some things you can't fix or some things take longer to fix because there are going to be
Mhm.
things that you can control too, right? So I think that's kind of hard to say, okay, these are the things I can control. And these are ones I can't control
Yeah.
those.
Yeah, and that's where it's important to be a good listener, though. Like, and
Yes.
it's about listening and communication. It's about compassion,
Yes.
because you're right. There are going to be things where our priorities shift, and sometimes that means that the workplace that you're in might not be the right workplace at
Yeah.
that time. So how do we still support that person? Even
Yes.
if their path takes them away from the organization or away from you as a supervisor.
Yes. Absolutely. It's interesting. I had a conversation with a colleague who has her undergrad in social psychology, and she's talking about understanding Gen Z generation and understanding their motivators and their influences on their life and how it relates to performance management. And I
Yeah.
thought, wow. So I thought that is fascinating. That is
Oh
so
yeah.
fascinating, right? To look at
Hmm.
generational, influences and motivators. And
Hmm.
yeah, really, really interesting to take a look at. And I think the approach that you talk about is and not blaming the person and looking back at us and the organization and the environment is the approach we should be taking clinically in our with our
Yeah.
students or our clients or families. It's not, well, why aren't they doing, it's not why, why aren't the parents doing,
Yeah.
why isn't the kid, what they did it yesterday, the student, now they're not doing it today, what's his problem, what's her problem, what's their problem, versus turning it back on us and saying, wait, what didn't we do? What are we not
Yeah.
doing? What can we do differently so we don't get that
Yeah.
challenging behavior or that non-engagement or whatever it is? So I think it's the approach regardless kind of what you're doing.
Yeah, and that's exactly, like, it's so easy for us to, think individualized for the students we work with, right? We're doing our FBAs, we're doing our
Right.
behavior support plans, everything's around that particular student.
Yes.
But then when we shift over sometimes into our supervisor hat with staff, we sometimes lose all of that, and we kind of want to
Yes.
apply, maybe these overarching group consequences, or it's just very quick to jump to a corrective action as part of our policy
Yes.
rather than taking the time to do the analysis and the work and to diagnose the issue, just like we do with our students every single day.
Yes. Yes. And have that connection and that conversation. And you talk about listening and really, really, and that's so important on just on a human level, right? Like just connecting. And I definitely think that's important across all of what we do. So let me ask you this. We talk about motivation, right? What motivates you at this point in your career to do the work you're doing and to continue to focus on OBM, right? Because that's what sustains your, I guess, motivation in this space.
Yeah, honestly, it's like it's being able to contact staff, it's being able to watch staff
Mm,
grow, it's being able to watch staff move from certain positions and go into different career paths.
mhm.
I really, really enjoy being able to connect with staff. I also get to connect with our students, but to make, to introduce people to, we do, we have severe autism is, the primarily population that is here at Melmark. So, which is not, a population that a lot of people tend to contact. If you're, say, in a district or home and community, you might have some experience with it. So for me, it's really motivating to get people to, the training that they need, being able to get to see the progress our kids make, feeling confident in their skills. And then, like I said, being able to then take that confidence and then say, oh, maybe I do want to become a behavioralist. Maybe I do want to become a teacher. And then them start to explore that. And it's just, yeah, it's just fun to be able to do that. It's fun to be able to talk about it. A lot of the stuff that I'm going to talk about isn't hard. Like, they're great tools out there. So I love, I'll talk about Nager's performance analysis flowchart, but I've talked about it here, and I love being able to, like, see if someone has that posted next to their computer in their office, And now they get to
Yes.
use that tool, or they're talking about how they're going to support someone, but they're using like some of the touch points that are from that flow chart and how they're going to be able to support that employee. So it's just really being able to see like that translation of skills across people.
I love that. I'm so excited to hear about your talk, and I think there's so much overlap with, how we use assessment again to change
Yeah.
behaviors. And so for us as behavior analysts, really to acknowledge and apply all that we know
Hmm.
across these different contexts, right? Whether you're a clinic, you're in academia, you're in education, you're doing parent coaching, parent consultation, and just really learning about that and assessment, right? Like
Yeah.
using those tools that we have in our incredibly
Yes.
powerful science.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, um, you're going to talk about motivation in your continuing education. You'll give us some tools. Is there anything else you can tell us to give us a little bit more of a teaser for your upcoming CE on March 6th?
I think the biggest thing is the walking away with those tools. Like
Mhm.
that, I think they're super simple tools. There is so much out there in the world of performance management literature that we don't need to reinvent wheels. It's just we know task clarification, performance feedback. Those are well researched. They're super simple sometimes to input. So for me, it's just being able to connect. I'll have little, alerts up there that these are resource tools. And I hope for the audience that they can either, go and grab them from the sites that I'll be mentioning. And like I said, it's hopefully they'll have it next to their desk as they move forward, or at least just, keep it in the back of their mind as they approach the next, potential concern, if there is one with their staff, and maybe just change their behavior just a little bit. And as they kind of work through and support, or, even coming up with new fun strategies to be able to kind of even motivate their staff within their classrooms. So that's always fun when people kind of get really excited about things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's important that we rejuvenate with new ideas, right? And share with one another. And I keep thinking about how what you're going to share with us and what you're talking about now can really influence resilience and avoid burnout for a lot of people
Yeah.
because, right? Because you're talking about supportive kinds of
Hmm.
approaches.
Yeah. It's a tough job what we do.
Yeah,
We don't, get to walk in, and we don't typically sit at a desk for long periods of time, right? We're up, we're moving around, we're our day that we thought we had planned out might,
right.
explode in the first 10 minutes. And now we need to pivot. And now we have, and especially as a supervisor, you have supervisees who are relying on you, who are also really tired. So yeah, how do you keep the fun? We've had people do things like public posting games and little competitions, and all just to kind of keep that like spark there. But then also, being able to acknowledge that today was a tough day. And
Yes.
then how do I then support? And sometimes those are the times that we do need to shift a little bit, and maybe, an extra donut here or there keeps things like those days going. And then praise, I always try to remind people of like, hey, just sometimes just our verbal praise can go so much farther than pizza or, a
Yes.
donut or things like that. So it's also taking a step back, which is, I think, hard as a supervisor sometimes, is that self evaluation. And I'll talk a little bit about this within there. But, if you're walking into a room and everyone's kind of scurrying away,
Right.
what does that tell you about, maybe some of your practices? So some of it is also the flip side that yes, we're going to be evaluating. You might be evaluating and diagnosing some performance concerns and reshifting, some interventions in that way. But then also at the equal side, we have to think about how our behavior might be affecting the situation.
Yes.
So there's a little bit of that as well, some self reflection. we need to do, and it's not fun, but it's good to do once in a while.
Yes, absolutely. And we can certainly support each other through those moments where we're taking a
Yeah.
look at what we're doing and learning and having self compassion. I think for those of us, for many of us, that's really hard. And so, reaching out to others, say, okay, I just realized this, talk to me, tell me you've done that before. And by and large, we're like, oh, yeah, that I was doing that, or oh, you should stop, like helping
Yep.
each other learn and support each other through those moments of self-reflection that can be difficult.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But it also kind of gives that human side to
Yes,
all of this. I mean, we are most of us, probably all of us, are competing against other priorities all day long.
all the time.
So it's also how do you navigate that? How do you set up measurement systems so that you can continue to monitor behavior, get your priorities done, but then also making sure that you are, you know, stepping in and giving that praise and not forgetting that, today was a tough day, and sometimes we have to reallocate that priority for that day, and we have to bring in a new one because it was a really tough day, and you know what, my team really needs a debriefing today, and they need to know that I acknowledge that it was a tough day, give an opportunity to talk through that, be open to feedback, right? And maybe that report that I needed to write during that moment can get shifted to a little bit later, because
Yes.
our staff need us in that moment. So it is a little bit of that as well, of recognizing, like, when do I need to push off a priority because just being there for staff is the main priority, even though it feels like maybe this looming deadline is hanging there.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I am really excited for your talk on March 6th. Thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely.
And this has been Behind the ABA Talk podcast with your host, me, Lisa Gurdin, and our esteemed guest, Dr. Jennifer Ruane. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise. It has been a wonderful conversation, and be sure to join us for Dr. Ruane's event on March 6th from 12 to 1:30 Eastern Standard Time. And if you miss the live event, no worries. You can always watch it and earn CEUs on demand. You can go to www.lsgurdinconsulting.com to learn more about all of our continuing education events that are designed to give us information, to inspire us, to connect us, and give us really meaningful content that will help enhance our practice. And so look at the on-demand library, and what's new is RBT modules for professional development units. So take a look at those. I'm doing those on a monthly basis, which has been really fun. And thank you again to our CE partners and sponsors, Massachusetts Partnership for Youth, Lab Collaborative, and Accept Collaborative. And lastly, a special thank you to my podcast producer, Cole Asher Hoffman. See you next time.